Discover the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast, hosted by Tiffany Benitez. Here, the complexities of being a woman in the tech industry are unraveled through discussions on key issues, personal growth, and how to succeed despite systematic challenges. It's a source of empowerment and inspiration for all women at all stages of their tech careers. Welcome to Women in Tech Trailblazers. I am so excited to be back with you guys today on another episode. I swear I love this. Like, if I could just take all of the energy that I have when I come on to be with each and every one of you guys and like put that into a bottle somewhere to use like on your moments, you're like, yeah, I need more coffee. But today we are here with an incredible guest. So I will introduce her in just a second, but really want to talk about the topic at hand. And we're going to talk about scaling loyalty and driving retention. So mostly we're on here trying to figure out all the things that we don't talk about as women. We're also here to talk about like, how do we kind of use those things to navigate and elevate our careers and our lives. And so this topic is super imperative and applicable, and I'm excited to talk today with our guest. So without further ado, we have Yasmin Marinaro. She is the Senior Marketing Executive with a track record of driving growth, loyalty, and brand impact across both disruptive startups, and global enterprises. So you got the best of both worlds, startups and global enterprises. As Vice President of Marketing at Besitos Corp and CashKick, she leads loyalty, engagement, and retention strategy for one of the fastest growing cashback and gaming platforms, leveraging MarTech innovation, behavioral targeting, and personalized lifecycle marketing to deepen customer relationships, boost activation, and maximize lifetime value. She steered marketing organizations through transformational company phases, from rapid startup scale up to enterprise level maturity, building the structures, processes, and teams needed to sustain growth. With a career spanning in high growth ventures and established brands like Benefit Hub, The Penny Hoarder, Penguin Random House, Photos, and American Express Publishing and Priceline, Yasmin blends entrepreneurial agility with enterprise discipline to launch new products, expand into new markets, and inspire through periods of significant change. She's recognized for uniting data-driven insights with creative execution, powered by expertise in omni-channel platforms, marketing, automation, analytics, and customer data infrastructure to deliver measurable engagement gains, foster enduring customer trust, and drive sustainable growth. Beyond her business leadership, she advances cultural and advocacy causes as a member of multiple nonprofit boards, leveraging her expertise to drive meaningful change in her local community. Welcome to the show, Yasmin.
Well, thank you so much for that glorious introduction. Very proud of a lot of those accolades and really excited to be here today and to share some of my experiences and hoping that your audience will relate and maybe be inspired by some of what we talk about today.
Yes, I am super excited to have you again. This topic, first of all, you're incredible, but the topic and then bringing like an incredible guest that's super passionate about this topic is what I'm here for. And I'll tell you, there's no surprise, like our podcast is really focusing on authenticity. It's more than the buzzword we continuously throw around of like, okay, authenticity. It's like, we all have a different perspective on what that is, and we all walk in that in a different way. And so sharing that and hearing from other people, I think, are really important. So we'll just start off with, what does authenticity mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question because I think it's been overused probably and lost some meaning along the way. But, I'll tell you just from personal experience, the sort of like tried and true definition, right? Like showing up as your full self, right? I think not fitting the mold, right? Having the courage to break out. All of those things are true. I think though, however, it's very common, especially when you're coming into a new environment, one maybe where there isn't great representation, right? And you're feeling, like the other. It's very easy to lean into wanting to emulate what you see, right? You want to speak the same way. You're like, okay, here's a leader in this organization. If I speak that way, if I lead that way, one day that's where I could be, right? I think it takes great courage and some maturity to really start to realize that what makes you unique becomes your superpower, right? And that's what differentiates you. And I think also inspires people to follow you. And that's a real clear distinction between just like reporting to you, right? I mean, it's like genuinely wanting to, aspire to be like you or follow in your footsteps in some way, shape, or form, right? So I think that's really what it means. It means having the courage, right, to dare to be different, dare to be you, dare to be unique. And whether that feels unpopular or like you're in a minority, which you likely will be, it is so, so important because it really shapes the way you can become an authentic and inspiring leader, as I've said. It allows you to, I think, open the door to communicate with empathy and transparency. And that ultimately builds trust, which I think in turn drives engagement. And that I think applies to a team, to a member base, to a community. I think it's all really the same theme across all of those.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. I mean, the truth is there's only one of you, right? So you may as well like be all of you. Like if you're trying to be someone else, you're just replicating, right? Which is just a duplicate. I think just really focusing in on who you are, what you bring, the value you add to the table. And if you don't know who that is, spend some time on figuring that out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's a great point. I think it takes some time. I mean, right? Like, and people, I remember people always asking me too, like when I was starting my career, what are you passionate about? Like what do you wake up in the morning excited about? And sometimes, it takes a little while to figure that out, for sure. You just don't have the answer. I mean, people start asking you that in college, right? Like all the time. And then like senior year, it's like, you've got it figured out, right? So no, it does take time, to your point. And I think you have to be open to trying different things. And like, it's okay to not know for some time.
Yes. It's also okay to pivot and change, like
Yes.
I laugh, but I say all the time, like I'm in my mid 40s and I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. Like I've
Right.
checked all the boxes of the things I said I was going to do, and I've done really incredible things. And then I think seasons also change. Like maybe what you wanted 5 or 10 years ago, maybe looks a little different now. And
Exactly.
It's okay to change. It's okay to not have it figured out. Just try something. If you don't like it, try something else, and just be okay with the journey. I don't know. I feel like there's something powerful about that.
That's just it. Exactly. And once you, I think, embrace that, you feel so much more empowered, versus like I'm at the mercy of, this or that, or, I lack control and agency here. So yeah.
It. Knowing that you actually are in control, right?
Yes.
Like there are a lot of things we are not in control of, and you can't control. And I'm laughing because you and I were just talking about business things before we got on that we can't control. But there's things that you can, right? And what is in your realm of control of like figuring out what you do and don't want to do and what risks you're willing to take are absolutely things that you can do. And just navigating and taking hold of, knowing that you have power to actually do and be is really, really important. I love that. Okay, I read your bio. It was incredible. Like you have a ton of background and experience and an incredible just path that you've made on your journey. Talk to me a little bit about your career path and really how along your path, that whole importance of driving retention and truly scaling loyalty, like what does that even mean and how you've kind of figured that out in your journey?
Yeah, no, thank you. So, my path was very nonlinear, right? I think mostly I was pursuing my curiosity and and really as it came to technology. I was a very from a kid, I was always like an early adopter. So I was already leaned into I always had the latest, like I had to have like the latest gadget or whatever it was, definitely computer science was my thing, in school and learning how to write code. And I mean, I was just really into all of it. And when I started my career, which I did in digital really from the onset, I just was so, I think, in awe of how the sort of like the digital evolution and, kind of that transformation that was happening at the time was democratizing access to things. So now now you could have better access to travel the world, right? And experience other cultures because now all these digital travel companies were booming and evolving and, creating access. And even from the economic standpoint, right, making that more accessible through their business models. Priceline was very much democratizing travel by making it more affordable, right? And they developed a model to be able to do that. And then, kind of moving on and evolving in my career through these roles, found that to be the case with personal finance and just creating that access, I think was something I thought was so powerful. And I think I was just really fell in love with the way creativity could, kind of blend with analytics and then become this super force, right, to change and shape human experiences. And I found too, really inspired by entrepreneurs early in my career. I think they shaped a lot of what I ended up becoming. I was motivated by their bravery, to set out to disrupt, like to set out and do something in a different way and like be so bold. And I think I would, there was a time when I was growing up, there was a time in my life I was pretty shy. And I think when I started to see, these brilliant individuals that just went for it and didn't let, anything dissuade them from like what they were so passionate about and what they were focused on, I think that really had a significant impact on me. And I knew some way, shape, or form, I really wanted to be close or at the center of innovation. And that for me definitely meant a career in digital, looking for opportunities where I could build, where I could disrupt in that way, where I could transform. And that really, I think, really started to lead to this path, really focused on building loyalty, engagement, retention, because really going from being very transactional to then understanding on the other side, there is a human being. We are in a digital space, but there's a human being on the other side. And how can we now leverage the technology to make this experience relevant and meaningful for them and help them in some way? Like that really was what hooked me and has kept me at the center of mission-driven, evolving really companies that are hungry for innovation. So I feel very fortunate that I found that early on.
Love that. Okay, so you've been in tech. Okay, you've been in tech for a while, so we're not going to skip the elephant in the room. Like, I'm sure you've been the only woman in the room many, many times, especially going back to even like your coding days, when you were in school. I mean, it's the reality. We're 28% nationally women in tech. So have you really encountered any like gender bias, and how, if so, have you navigated through some of that? Before we jump back in, a quick thank you to Women in Technology of Northwest Arkansas for being part of this journey. We cannot thank them enough. They continue to create space for women to grow, connect, and lead in tech. Let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, so, it's a great question. I think you have to pull it apart a little bit. So I think, yes, the answer is yes. I became a leader, like a team leader pretty early on. And so, and like you said, just sort of being, in the minority, you kind of walk, I think one of the things is you walk into the room knowing that, and that could kind of play head games with you too, right? So it's important to be aware of that. But certainly, I've always been, aiming to and pursuing like the benefit of the doubt, right? And so not like, assuming when I walk into a room that that's what's going to happen. And sometimes I would say I probably was in disbelief when it was happening, and I was probably like, oh, I could, no, that was just an off day, or that was just right. But like, it can show up really subtly. And so sometimes it's even hard to pick up on those signals. But it could mean things like where you just can't make your ideas heard, right? Like they're kind of being overlooked constantly, or you're having to repeat yourself, or you're having to like repackage something in like 10 different ways before it gets noticed. Assumptions about what you know, what you don't know, definitely your technical acumen. Maybe criticisms of the way you lead, because you might lead maybe with more empathy. And maybe that wasn't something that was valued by people that, I think favor other types of cultures. And so I think what I really ended up doing in turn, one, I think it's important, and I say this to everybody listening, you can't always change. If there's a toxic situation or an environment, I think, we always want to give it our all, right? But there are moments where you have to like realize that maybe this is not a good fit. So I just want to put that out there, and that's okay. Actually, it's great. It is not only self-preservation, but honestly, it's not worth your time. Know your worth. If you're not respected, if there's no door that's going to be open for you, I think, move on. But let's say, this is happening, and it's happening in these like kind of microaggression forms and what have you. What I ended up really doing, and I think what I continue to do, is really turn it on its head and really focus on proving your worth through outcomes, data, all the performance, right? The achievements, really focusing on that, really trying to minimize the noise and the distraction that can cause, because it can cause, it can play games with your mind. I will say data and results and impact speak louder than anything else. So don't lose focus on what those outcomes are. But also, I think, sometimes you want to go it alone and kind of like, I can do this, and I can be tough and I can change all this. I think one of the things, it took me a long time to learn this, that allyship is so important. You don't have to suffer alone. Like, find people within your organizations that can become your mentors, or at least a system of support. I think that's so important, and it's so empowering, and there's a lot to learn from those types of relationships. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of a complex one.
No, it is.
The only other thing I was going to say was, sometimes that type of bias being directed at you can like lead to reverse bias. So where now you in turn have this bias, right? And you're expecting to be treated that way all the time, and that can also, I think, be very dangerous. So it's important to, I think, put things in perspective, and also kind of not make your own assumptions about others too, right? Because if you're applying that in the other direction, I think, obviously that doesn't do very much for your own cause.
Always assume positive intent, because the reality is, like, sometimes people are having a bad day. Like, not everybody is just
Right.
out. And it's what I do a lot of women's advocacy, but the thing that I really remind women is that we're actually not where we should, like, we're not as far along as we should be, not really because men are holding us back. It's really because, like, we don't take risk, right? We don't apply for the roles. We overanalyze everything. I mean, there's just a whole list of things, and most of it isn't someone else holding you back. A lot of it is us holding ourselves back. And I think you're right. We need to be intentional about knowing that, and not always thinking like every single situation or every room,
That's
is there to like take you back. Because I mean, I think even if you talk to so many of our allies, like, the reality is, like, they're not walking in those shoes. So mostly there's just not even a lot of awareness. And then we
right.
have like created the environment of like talking about it being taboo, where maybe if they knew, then they could see, and there would be awareness, and maybe they could bring attention to it. So I think there's just a little bit on both parts of like of doing that, but don't show up automatically,
That's
even
right.
because you're the only woman, assuming like everyone's against you, because mostly that's not the case, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then when it is the case, like you said, your value and worth. Don't be afraid to eat at a table, or to leave a table that doesn't,
That's
right?
it.
Like,
Exactly.
go eat where they know your value and worth, and there's plenty and plenty places to go. No, I absolutely love that. So on this topic of like retention, and again, more than just like a company saying like, yes, we really care about like retaining our people. I think retention often comes down to more than just a good product or whatever you're delivering, right? And more about creating an experience people want to return to. What strategies have you seen really work for building loyalty? Okay, because we're kind of talking
Yeah.
about loyalty here, right? Which I believe then equals retention, whether it be, and whether that's customers or teams. I mean, I think the whole retention and loyalty really go back to both scenarios of customers and teams. But what strategies have you really seen work best for that?
Yeah. This is like my passion point. So I will say they go hand in hand, like you said, right? One and the other, right? And the important thing to remember is that it's earned. This goes for, you know, human relationships, our relationships with our customers, our relationships with, our teams. It boils down to people feeling respected, valued, rewarded. And I would say more and more now, especially, in the current landscape, right? We are fighting for attention and time as brands and products. We are really trying to break through, right? There's a lot of noise, there's a lot to consume. Our attention spans are getting shorter, sadly. But what is important to remember about all that is when an individual, and I hate to call them users actually, because it sort of anonymizes, humans, right? Takes the humanity out of the customer base. But when your members or your customers are giving you time and attention, that is the most valuable piece of currency. And similarly, people that choose to work on your team at your company, in your organization, they're giving you all of their time, right? So that we have to remember is probably the most valuable piece of currency they can give to us. And so what in exchange are we giving them, right? We're not here simply to monetize them, and we're not here simply to profit off of them. We are here to deliver value, right? And I think if you keep that at the center of everything you're doing, I remember working with an entrepreneur that always said, everything we do, the main question we always have to ask ourselves is, how is this helping our readers, right? I was in digital publishing at the time. Is this helping our readers? Ask yourself that question. And that will lead you ultimately to the work you should be doing, right? And it will shape the work you should be doing. And I really, that really stuck with me. And I think sometimes brands, lose their way and they kind of leave that behind, or it's sort of the last thing on the list. It should be the first thing on the list. And the why, like, I think remembering, why is it that they chose to engage with you? What was the promise that, they came to begin this relationship with your brand or your team or your organization, right? And keeping that at the center and continuing to deliver on what that was, right? And that may evolve and change over time. I think specifically for, team leads, it's about creating a space that feels psychologically safe, that feels that they're rewarded for their hard work and effort, that you celebrate them. I mean, it doesn't have to be, big things. We're celebrating every day, like small achievements, small wins, these micro moments I think are really impactful. And even, even the failures, I think, are wins, right? We've learned from, those experiences. And so that, I think, that sort of set, like that sort of like value system, I think applies very much across customer bases and teams, and will do a world of good in creating loyalty and creating great experiences. I think you mentioned it too, right? Like when people are having great experiences and they feel valued and rewarded, that's really the key to unlocking loyalty.
Yeah, I mean, everybody just really wants to know they matter. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, we can complicate the equation if we want, but bottom line, like, what am I doing? Does it even matter? Like, I'm pouring all of my time and energy. We all spend way more, hours at work than we do at home. Like, if I don't think what I'm doing matters, why would I do it even better? And I talk to like C-suite leaders all the time of like truly understanding, listen, I get it. We're here for business and to make money. But what you need to know is that if your people knew they actually mattered, if they understood the value behind what they're delivering, they'll do more than you ever even ask. And then guess what? That equivalates to more dollars. So you just need to understand the equation a little bit better and know that, like, I know you're focused on the bottom line, but the bottom line increases or decreases based on how your people are feeling, like how they feel like they're actually part of what's being delivered. Completely. And it's essential. It's essential.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's a great point too, like constantly, I really am intentional about, making sure everybody understands like what impact they're driving, right? So it's like, okay, you don't want to just be like toiling away at something and like not seeing, some kind of outcome. And that can easily happen, right? Everybody's moving so fast and, we're all, pursuing really aggressive goals and we want to achieve and all of that. But it's important, like, I mean, as much as possible every day to sort of understand like, okay, what is my role here? And look, I'm, whatever role I'm playing at whatever level in the org, I'm having this impact, right? If I'm helping one of our members, if we're looking at, in our case, how much people are earning in rewards, that's very powerful, right? To feel like you've had a hand in that. So yeah, 100% agree with that. And, the most successful organizations, I think, are those that, instead of chasing the profits, right, they're focused on these very important themes. And that in turn, the success will come as a result.
So I think what I heard you say is if you want to make more money, focus on your people.
That's it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, we are coming up on my least favorite part of every episode, which is towards the end. We always leave our listeners with the same question every single time. And it's a two-part question. So the first is, what legacy do you hope to leave? And the second part of it is, if you could leave our audience with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Okay. The legacy I hope to leave. I hope that by the end of all of this, whenever I decide to, ride off into the sunset, that I have played a hand in redefining what leadership looks like. And that leadership can very much be and should be a combination of, empathy, strategy, creativity, all of that can come together to really create exceptional leadership moments. And I think, I want to be known for building teams that not only hit their KPIs, but that actually cared about the work, that were passionate about the work, and that, grew personally from that work. I'm really proud of the fact that, I've mentored teams for, as I mentioned, since earlier on, I had that opportunity and, still have relationships with those folks. And I've seen them and all of their trajectories in their careers, and just really proud of how they've evolved over time and how we still rely on each other as, a support network and can share our experiences. So those connections are really important to me. And hopefully I've tripled what I've done to date, by the time I decide to retire and move on to something else. So the second question was the piece of advice. So I would say, kind of going back to where we started, finding that clarity about what drives you, how, and it may take some time, but like, don't start out with predefined kind of concepts about what success is, right? Or I should be making this amount of money, or I should have reached this job title by this time, or I should, I think you got to throw all that away and really start with, what is it that drives you, right? What is that, like, fire in your belly? I think, leaning into what makes you authentic, as we said before, and that can take some time to feel sort of comfortable in your own skin to do that, but like seek out the opportunities to do that. And if that means like the mentorship, forming connections with communities, right? Women in tech, we've got BIPOC communities, we've got Out in Tech that supports the LGBTQ community. Lean into, those support systems. Don't go it alone. Also remember to hold the door open for someone else, because they were once where you were. I think that is so important. You have to build equity for the next generation. And I find maybe people lose sight of that. So maybe a few pieces of advice, but yeah, I think those things are really key. And, just to kind of keep centered with those things kind of driving you, you'll find your way. You really will. I have made the mistake in my past to be kind of, follow a shiny object and, come to understand that actually that's not what I should have been doing. And then, had to make a pivot, like we said, and that's okay. But certainly I've learned, to be discerning and kind of apply these values as I'm, kind of navigating my way.
Love it. That's incredible. Thank you so much. I know your schedule is crazy and busy, so thank you so much for taking time out to be here with all of us today. As usual, Yasmin's information and her LinkedIn will come across the page at the end. So go out and follow her, watch the incredible leadership that she builds, lives, acts out every single day. And then to each and every one of you as listeners, thank you. None of this happens without you. Grateful for you continuing to follow. So just keep doing that. Share with us any topics that you really would want to hear about if you haven't heard on them yet. And then always remember to like, subscribe, and continue tuning in. Until next time, we will see you soon. Bye. You've been listening to the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast. Thanks for being here. If something resonated with you, please share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, or anyone you know that needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to catch what's next. We'll be back soon with more real stories and honest conversations. Until then, keep showing up and let's keep making space at the table.